There is a project called Disnix, which is used to distribute one configuration over a network. So you can define with a configuration file how the server interact. But Sanders shall come soon to destroy this project.
Well, then you have machine deployment, which normally probably is the same, goes in the same area as config management. We get machines which are donated normally, so they sit in some data center we don't know of, and then somebody puts a CentOS version on there, and then we do the stuff we do. I think it might be different with other people, with other distributions. I'm not sure about that. I think Debian probably gets all the stuff donated to them.
We get a lot of stuff donated, yeah. Some of it is for the build system especially. Some of them are privately owned, although we're phasing those out. But most of the stuff gets donated in many cases by HP, because HP is a very big sponsor of Debian. And then presumably they get installed by a Debian person and they do that stuff. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, with the Gentoo ones, I'd say less than 15% of the machines are actually owned by us. Mainly it's a machine sitting in a data center somewhere, and we ask them, please boot it on a live CD and tell us the IP and we'll install it.
Right, right.
Actually, Nokia runs all the hardware from Maemo, which is kind of uncool. But that's kind of an interesting side problem to what you guys are. How many machines does CentOS have then for its infrastructure? Do you know?
Without counting all the dead ones, I'd guess around 150.
150.
Is that correct?
How about Gentoo?
What do you do with such
160.
large number? What do you do with such large number of machines?
Mirrors, for a large part.
Ah, so you count mirrors too?
It's a machine.
They are owned by you, all the mirrors.
No.
Okay, how many, let's rephrase the question then. How many machines does your infrastructure team directly manage?
Yeah, like
and have
configure
control
and
over?
deployment.
150, that's what I said.
So you have root on those 150 machines?
You manage
50
you have access
machines?
to Maro, or
What?
you can
We can access those. Those are
Okay.
our machines.
Okay.
They get pulled from time to time if new ones come up. So if you want to have if you need a test machine because you say, well, I want to test out something new, you can get a machine from that pool to do that.
Right, right.
If you want to do test setups, you can get. But normally, many of those are, well, mirrors to feed other mirrors from.
Right.
okay. So that's primary kind
So
of primary.
most of the time they are doing mirror stuff, but on demand they can be used for something else.
Yes.
Right.
How many does Gentoo have?
And in Gentoo we have about 60 main infrastructure machines at the moment, and then another 20 odd build machines.
So that's well.
I'm not in the infrastructure team, as I said, but on a blog of a guy who actually is in the infrastructure team for Debian, they were talking about 100. I don't know where that figure comes from, but 100 is what I heard.
How many do you guys have?
Oh, I think it's much smaller than that. For build system, it's about 10 machines, 10 systems just to build.
Up
And
until November, Maemo had one,
yeah.
and then they pushed everything out to Akamai.
Ow.
Yeah, yep. Nokia pays that bill.
To build?
No, they had another machine that they built internally, but because of NDA restrictions, that's behind a firewall. It's a really broken system. I don't recommend it.
But
And then you do have the management side of infrastructure. So where do those machines come from? Who do I have to say thank you for? Which machines do I have to look after I read, well, listen, this company went boom.
Debian actually had set up an LDAP directory over a decade ago, where all that kind of stuff is managed. It's all
Software in
stored.
public interest.
I have to admit, we have a file or several files.
Well, you really want to have something that's more
Internal wiki with version control.
right. Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
we have-
what we have is an LDAP directory where not only all users are stored in, but also all machines, with some extra schema stuff that, added to it. So you can actually add stuff like who's the local administrator, who's the donator, what's the SSH key stored in there as well.
Who do you phone when the machine goes down?
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff is stored all in the.
Does anybody use something like what's it called? GDI? No, not GDI. GLPI or something different from that?
I don't know what you're
Being
talking
a database for doing exactly that.
about. No. Well,
Uh-huh.
right. This thing, this LDAP directory was set up before I became a Debian developer, and I'm became a Debian developer in 2001. So it's quite old. It's working not too bad. It has its issues. It's something homegrown, as is the case for much in Debian. So yeah, it does a job.
Okay, and then you have the planning side, updates, new machines. How do you do testing? How do you deploy stuff out there? Does the mirror network now go to CentOS 5 completely from CentOS 4, or how do you plan those updates?
Well, the Debian mirror network is not owned by Debian actually. It's mostly people who run a general mirror and yeah, we can add Debian to
okay,
it
sure,
as well.
Sure, we have those. Those are most of our mirrors too.
Right,
sure.
right.
But you have the internal stuff. Because, well, Debian probably has the same luxury as we have. We have pretty long-running distributions. So it's like, well, we have 7 years. So if
yes,
some of the machines are
yours.
still CentOS 4, they will run.
Ours are release of the next distribution plus 1 year actually. So that's currently about 3 years. So not as long.
Do you think there's a possibility to share some of the infrastructure across distro, particularly mirrors? I mean, since they're basically two major packaging formats, you would think that a lot of RPMs are duplicated across the various mirrors, across the various distros.
Well, they're not necessarily the same RPMs.
No, not necessarily the same
They may
version.
depend on different versions of libraries.
Yeah, that's true, but there's probably some redundancy. I mean, do you
Yeah,
think
probably.
you could have multiple mirrors, multiple package repos?
Yeah, but before trying to share binary packages, it would mean starting to share either spec file for RPM,
You can
sharing macros, sharing
it's only a working. I mean, if you look at Debian and Ubuntu, they sometimes have packages with the same name because they were built from the exact same source. But the version in Debian was built against this library, and the version in Ubuntu was built against that library. So if you try installing the Ubuntu version on a Debian machine, everything goes kaboom. So don't try that.
Well, you could have separate repos.
Well, yeah, okay, but then you're not really sharing infrastructure anymore. You're just sharing a hard disk. That's all.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to just sharing hard disk, I think you may end up getting better results out of file systems with deduplication, because they don't have to know that the file's the same thing.
Right.
Well, Canonical, or at least Mark Shuttle was proposed that and said, well, let's, at least for the enterprise distributions, let's all have the same kernel. Let's all have the same libc, which doesn't work either, I guess. But
something is happening there between.
that would be that would be one possibility to move in a direction like that. But on the other hand, it's just, well, you have machines, we have machines, we can lend machines. But I don't think that you can really share mirrors, because it's just too dependent on what distribution is on there. I mean, Mandriva is using RPMs. I won't get any Mandriva RPM installed on CentOS normally.
No.
Without Force. With Force, yes,
I know.
sure, but it doesn't work then.
Well, it does, but you get to keep both pieces.
Yeah.
Or actually 6 pieces.
Okay, that's not really infrastructure, but that also has to happen. How do you people document your internal stuff?
Documented. Yes. Wiki.
Well, we also.
It's locked down, internal access only wiki.
No, it's all public.
Public
Everything is
wiki
public.
and
There's
then
nothing secret.
policy documents.
Well,
You have private phone numbers in there even?
Or machine
No,
names?
we don't
don't need
have that in
private.
Wiki.
So where do you share that information?
Well, it's on an internal mailing list
But
and
that's
people
not
write it down.
documentation.
Everything we do in wikis is just
We should
the public
organize that
stuff.
better. Phone numbers and stuff. We should organize that better.
Yeah, but you can go anyway.
That's why an LDAP directory is a good idea.
Sorry, what?
That's why an LDAP directory is a good idea. You just do LDAP search and you have the information, and you can lock that down with passwords if you only want your own developers to have that information. In Debian, we actually have a web front end as well, where you can search and update stuff. So that works really well, in my opinion. Well, for documentation, we actually have 3 modes mainly. We've got people uploading packages with documentation, for our policy and stuff like that. We've also got the wiki, where presumably a lot is documented, and we have in the web page, which is mainly a public CVS repository that gets automatically converted to web and stuff. So basically, I think everybody does it that way.
Yeah, Wiki seems to be
Just wanted to mention that within Terror, for example, there's something like tasks, which is an accounting system where people can subscribe and manage their own personal information. This lets the user decide which information he or she wants to share with others. You can simply say, I want to share my email address, I want to share my phone number, if so, between the development cycle. And these information could then easily be queried from ISC. We have a passport in ISC. You can simply put command on that and query that information there. And this is a very useful process for direct communication, I think. What I want to say is, which information do you really want to hide?
Actually, I've started.
Let the user decide which information he or she would want to hide. And do not generally set up a hidden process, because that's always something strange. I prefer open process where the users or the developers or the members of the community can either decide if they want to share or not to share their things. Besides,
yeah, okay,
for example, we've got an LDAP server and all that stuff too, 389, something like that.
Okay, there has to be infrastructure stuff which is not public, because I'm not going to tell anybody the IP addresses of the servers, mostly. Oh, well, okay, that's
They can do DNS lookup.
Yeah, they can.
Why not?
But don't want to have a list on there who's admin on the machine or who is responsible for a machine or...
Why not?
Why not?
Why is it information secret?
Why would that be?
Information at least between the infrastructures.
You're saying we share on the infrastructure team on a private wiki.
Sure.
All the infrastructure team has access to
Why
that
shouldn't it
wiki.
be public though?
I mean, obviously
you
not gonna.
have
Obviously,
you have to have passwords somewhere.
okay, obviously the passwords are not going to be on a public wiki. That
Right.
makes sense. But
The donators don't
but
have to be on there.
why not? I mean, if
If they
somebody
want to, yes. If they don't want to, no.
Some of our
that's
sponsors
the-
explicitly requested.
that's a
on
different
the
matter. That's a different matter. But saying I thought you meant in general they shouldn't be there. That would be
Yeah, okay.
silly. Some people would explicitly request that they are listed there. But what I'm thinking is much of this information, as long as it wouldn't compromise the security, that I don't think there's any harm in making it public. And it actually makes it easy for people if they see something is going wrong, makes it easy to figure out where to go. If
Yeah.
necessary.
Absolutely.
Clearly defined for complete infrastructure management
Yeah.
process. As in also the process how to take part in the infrastructure. Because I wouldn't know how to become an infrastructure member if this were Gentoo or so. Maybe there's some process on the wiki or something which is public.
there is a page on the main website.
And you're quite far beyond some other distributions. If this process is clearly defined, then you can simply take part in this infrastructure team, and you have your responsibilities, and within this infrastructure team you share the information like in any other team, like in the other team. It's totally equal.
Fedora has standard operating procedures that they publicly list, so anybody who saw a server go down reads the standard operating procedures and follows those procedures to bring the server back up, right?
And I'm not sure why not share this information.
Yeah, a lot of other distros don't do that.
But then
I think that's a good idea.
Any new infrastructure like that.
Yeah.
It is indeed a major problem within Debian to get more volunteers to work on that. That is true.
Yeah, finding infrastructure people is very difficult.
Yeah.
But standard operating procedures, I think, would really help.
Yes. There are a bunch of our procedures on the internal wiki that we really should publish, like how we go about installing a new machine from scratch.
Right.
That'd be good to know.
You do that yourself?
No, like based on your initial shell. This is what you have to do to fire up the automation.
Okay.
So I have to largely agree with what these guys said. It's it's some sort of in the spirit of open source that you just it won't compromise the security. So you just put it online in a public wiki, just protect the page from being edited by anyone, and then you write there, well, we do it this way. Any user can read how you do it, but he won't be able to just do it because he doesn't have the right credentials to access anything. And well, it wouldn't be really transparent for someone who stands for open source software when it just says, well, our internal structure is hidden from you. You don't see how we work internally. So it's a natural thing for me. And the information that has actually to be kept secret is just a few access credentials and phone numbers, and the rest can be made public because there's no secrets among those.
There's an extension question about the discussion we were having at the moment. Should all users be able to see Naga or status of what's down?
Why not?
Yes.
What's the harm? What's the harm? I mean, exactly, because I mean, if you go to, I think it's actually there's a benefit to it, because if you try to access something and it doesn't respond, then it might be at your end, it might be at the remote end. If you can actually access the monitoring system, where you can see, oh yes, this server is down, then you know you don't need to look further. You just need to tell the right people that, hey, this server is down, you might want to reboot it. Whereas if you don't know that the server is down, you might be assuming that, oh, it's probably going to be running because these guys are good, so it has to be on my end, and you're wasting half an hour or half a day to figure out that actually the server was down. So it's actually a good thing to make those kind of things public. I don't think it would compromise your how do you say that, your reputation or anything, because if your server goes down occasionally, because I mean everybody has a server go down occasionally, it's not a big thing.
But the only project we can find that's doing this already is Mozilla.
Debian Semi does that. Not really. There's something. Some website where you can actually go.
Yeah, but the Mozilla one is not exactly well publicized.
Well,
you have to know what the URL is.
Yeah, same goes for ours, and it comes up with a password which is guessed or something.
Yes. For Mozilla as well.
So I mean, it's semi-public, but I don't think there's any harm in having it public, as long as you don't put passwords.
It depends on the yes.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia Foundation, the Wikia guys publish both the Nagios and the cacti-graphing publicly.
Okay.
I think a part of the Yahoo open source group do as well. But these are both, of course, commercial companies.
I think most distributions publish their mirror stuff. The status, most distributions publish the status of the mirrors.
Yes.
Yeah. Which certainly makes sense, because, yeah.
Also because those are machines you can't control always.
Right.
But I think the hard part is to find what I mentioned before, to find new members for the infrastructure team. And there's something I already discussed a lot of times as well. How do you want to decide, how do you want to make sure that one who got the knowledge to manage the machines, who is a trusted person, and who knows what he or she does, will get into the infrastructure team. And this is something I'm not yet sure how to filter. I haven't found a way how to filter that, these aspects. Because how do you want to filter them? Does one of the old infrastructure members, for example, have to know the new infrastructure member personally? What if he or she comes from India and nobody knows him or her? How can you make sure that you can trust him or her? How do you handle these things? How do you bring new people on?
I think the trust thing is the largest thing, because seeing what people can do, they can vocalize themselves on mailing lists and say, well, what you're doing there is playing wrong, because if you want to do it correctly, do it that way. So you get from people, well, they know the stuff they're doing and they're interested in doing stuff. But I think the trust thing really goes very, very deep.
In Debian, that trust problem is basically solved by saying that only Debian developers can become infrastructure people.
Yeah.
And then
you
have a whole trust.
You have the developer process, which is rather harsh.
Well, harsh is. I would not use.
Has anybody
do note that I'm involved with that developer process. I wouldn't use that word harsh, but I understand. Yeah, it's involved. That's
it's
true.
getting better.
It's getting better. It's getting much better.
I didn't say it was bad. So
you said harsh.
You said harsh.
It's the same thing.
I know what you mean.
A related question there: is anybody that's joined Debian explicitly to work on the infrastructure team, or did they join as developer first?
Probably.
As a developer on purpose?
Don't think so. I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't think so. We did get one person who joined just to do documentation, not packaging. And in theory, there's no problem with joining just as an infrastructure member. We don't have a procedure for that yet. If somebody were to suggest that they wanted to do that, we have to figure out how to come up with that. But basically, if you are a Debian developer, or if you want to be part of the infrastructure team, you have to be a Debian developer. That's basically our process currently.
So by definition, then, you have to become a Debian developer before you can be considered to contribute that way. To become a Debian developer, you either have to do packaging work or documentation.
And people have to know you, don't they?
You can get the code for Debian build systems and for DAC and for rep repro and all that stuff and commit patches, and that's one way to get in. And I'm sure if you did that, you'd get sponsored and it would be a very easy way in. So in that regard, it's all open. They're not necessarily going to let you log on to the machines and start hacking code, but the code's all available.
Okay, but does that mean some of the old infrastructure team needs to know the new infrastructure personally?
Not personally, but you need to know who he is, and you need right. I mean, not personally as in person, but you need to know who they are. Yeah.
Yeah, like in the case of the Gentoo stuff, there's two cases. First of all, are you explicitly joining as infrastructure? And we've only had, I think, 3 people from that, and they all happen to work at OSL's open source lab. So they already knew when our infrastructure that was there, and that's why
infrastructure, don't they?
Yeah, they've got a bunch of machines already. That's why they were joining. But then you have to have been a developer for at least 3 months, and somebody else that is already an infrastructure member must vouch for you.
That's your process. Means you have to have some e-builds and packages in the system.
No, in our case, it's even more general than that. Moderators on the forums. On our moderators on the forums, we don't have the Gentoo wiki is not in-house. It's actually entirely an external entity that runs it, so it doesn't really count.
Right.
But there've been some knowledgeable people there that we've said, hey, you know what you're doing.
Go ahead. Right.
And like so they sort of documentation, but not really.
Right.
So the next logical step would be kind of mentoring process to let the new maintainer know how to treat the processes, because they might be not very well documented, some kind of special. Is there something like a mentorship?
Isn't that the only way to do it? Because all the build systems are different. You know, knowing how to build packages on Debian is not going to help you know how to build packages for CentOS. And the infrastructure is catering to those tools. And the infrastructure is probably custom made. So isn't probably the only way to, say, recruit people and mentor them through?
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this roundtable here, to learn how others do it. Right. And if maybe there are processes where we can say, well, let's do that together, or well, let me learn from you because you seem to be doing it the right way.
Well, there isn't any right or wrong way. Every distribution has its own rules.
But I think these process like mentorship is not wrong in any kind of distribution.
I'm listening to all of you, and it's really interesting for me because I'm a user. And but I've noticed that there isn't any explanation of the role of every person on the infrastructure. Debian says that you have to be Debian developer, so this is the top. I understand.
The top, as in?
Yeah, the infrastructure. The
role
that you have to.
Debian developer is just a person who has the ability to upload packages into Debian, so we can actually
and can vote.
And can vote.
Also too generic. There isn't any specific role of a member, not only in Debian, on every distribution. And I think this is something wrong. I think that every person on distribution, on infrastructure, has to have a specific role and not to do all things.
Oh, so okay. Well, we do have that. We do have that. It's not be mentioned yet, but it doesn't mean we don't have it. At least in Debian, we've got people who do mailing lists, and we've got people who do system administration. We've got people who do FTP master, which is the mirror network.
People in charge of the build.
Yeah.
And then we have a technical team who governs all of Debian too. So there's a lot of very well-defined roles.
That's totally true. Yeah. It would be crazy not to do it, because otherwise some people would have to do everything, and just doesn't work.
That's the problem. That's
And
the
they're also
problem.
not actually interested in doing everything.
Right.
And
then things don't get done.
They're interested in like one small thing.
Right.
And, like we've got two guys that are very interested in the mirror, in our mirror side, and they run it pretty damn well.
XFC last year said that we have to count the bus effect, and they mentioned that if 5 or 6 people are killed now, the country is dead, or some guys are going to continue the project. I think this is something very specific on the role of the persons on infrastructure distribution.
Yeah, that's why the process has to be clearly defined, documented.
I think the only point I want to make over here, which sort of counters the argument that the gentleman there has made, is that in a volunteer-based organization, holding people down to specific roles creates black holes.
Yeah.
You need, unless you've got a significantly large pool of resources, you cannot have people working within silos. Because if you do, you're creating black holes that you don't know how and when they're going to get you. So in Debian, I'm guessing the numbers are not in single digit. I'm guessing there's more than 9 people doing infrastructure, so it's probably possible to have a couple of people.
Much more. If you count build administrators and system administrators and FTP masters and list masters, I'm sure you'll get in at about 30, 40 people, something like that.
So it only says the infrastructure team, which enters only 7 people.
But it changes. I mean, you're pointing to a very fundamental fact that these are volunteer organizations. You can't tell somebody, are you going to work from 9 to 5 this week? You can't say, well, can you even dedicate 40 hours a month? You have to sort of take what they can give.
Sure.
And that's a fundamental problem. I mean,
and when there's a downtime or a breaking, we've had 2 in Debian, then these people need to dedicate a lot of time that they may or may not have. So it is something you need to worry about, actually.
By the way, one more thing that I noticed, of course it does not actually apply specifically here, is that developers make very bad sysadmins.
Oh yeah.
Very bad what?
Sysadmins. But we do find that the people who tend to be sysadmins don't tend to have a lot of packages in Debian, in my opinion. They do sysadmin and they may have 1 or 2 packages, maybe something that they just happen to use, but indeed...
Or stuff they use as sysadmin.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. There's something that they happen to use for their sysadmin work in Debian then, but usually they don't have a lot of packages, at least what I've looked at. Is this because they spend so much time as sysadmining that they don't have time to do packaging work, or is this some other reason? I don't know, but...
No, yeah. With a bunch of the J2 ones, is that they're not interested heavily in the packaging process.
Right.
Yeah. Developers tend not to care about packaging at all. They see it as a necessary evil that they'd like to get out of. I mean, you look at Python and Ruby, they both have pretty...
Are you calling those packages?
So yeah.
I've long maintained that Ruby has some of the most brilliant people working on it, and Gems is a very fine example of how a brilliant committee creates a shit product.
Yeah, exactly.
But these are problems for the distributions, because I hear from developers, Perl developers all the time, they say, oh, Debian's too old. Well, you're using Debian stable. It's not old, it's stable. Use testing. Oh, but that's too cutting edge. No, not unstable, testing. So, but that's an issue for all distributions. How, what's your stable period?
You don't want Apache 2.2? Use Fedora. Or 2.3? Use Fedora. You don't get 7 years with that, okay, but...
13 months are enough.
What?
13 months are enough.
13 months.
But yes, but there's a problem. Developers don't want to do packages because they want to develop.
Right.
Sysadmins don't want to do packages because they want to do sysadmins, but they depend on the packages because I don't want to sysadmin machines which aren't packaged.
Right.
Thank you.
That's just so somebody has to do packages.
Aren't most developers in all distributions doing mostly packaging work?
most of them in Debian, at least I know.
We
but
have it
of
rather.
course,
We have it rather easy. Packaging is done for us.
You guys, you just steal from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
we read that's Ubuntu, sure.
Yeah, something like that. No, indeed, of course, you got the infrastructure software. Now it gets confusing. You've got things like your package manager for Debian SD package, which we develop ourselves. Well, not we, but some of us develop ourselves. And we do have some other software that we need to do. But indeed, yeah, most developers for distribution will be packages. That's true.
I think Susie's open build service will present a very interesting challenge because I think that it can build both debs and RPMs. And if you have an automated system, you're taking away the human element of building packages, and that's going to...
But you have, you have to have a rules file for the Debian packages, you have to have a spec file for the RPMs, and you have to have a different spec file for SUSE RPMs in there and for
you have to keep in mind the difference between distributions that are not just only packaging formats. They are more than just a different format for packaging.
Precisely, and when you have an automated tool that builds packages, then you're hopping over a human, and there's a difference in quality in the package.
So does has to be a human. Does it has internal knowledge of difference between Debian and Red Hat, for example?
I don't know if OpenSUSE has this, but I do know that there are distributions that use OpenSUSE's build system to build their distro.
But what you still need to do is you still have to know, some human has to decide, how do I configure this package? Do I enable this feature? Do I disable it? Do I build two packages that where it's disabled and one is enabled? Or do I just, or how does this build system, does this package have a plugins infrastructure? Do I ship the plugins in the same package? Do I split them in separate
It's already decided for you in the build system.
That's things that the human has to do. And after that, I mean, you don't compile it yourself. After that's decided, you just run your compile tool, and if a bot does it, or if you just type one command to compile, there's no huge difference for me. So the decisions still have to be made by a human who puts this specifications into the build system.
I mean, even if it's not a spec file, it's going to be a configure file, or whatever, or a make file.
Specification that
it's
tells
just
you
a specification of how to build something, and indeed, whether the bots or a human builds it. If I type make or the bot types make, the result is going to be the same, hopefully. So, yeah, well, I do maintain a build system, so I do say hopefully. And yeah, I mean, yeah, anyway.
I mean, for the open source build service, it's of course the case that every package has a maintainer, and that, more specifically a maintainer group. So we divided up the packages into projects where you can have groups of maintainers, and it's also true that we build for Debian and RPM-based distributions, and I think that's a chance because we just agreed that nobody really wants to do packaging work. So developers don't want to, sysadmins don't want to, so we have to seek out specifically for packagers, which aren't, I don't think that's the most attractive thing to do in our world. So
maybe not this
you still have to know what the, for example, naming convention is in the
yes,
solution.
of course, packaging is extremely a difficult thing, but it's also true that most people come in as developers or sysadmins, and then they have to be turn themselves into packagers, or is it?
So you mean enabling users to build packages for?
I mean, enabling people to collaborate on packaging might be help to reduce the pain of packaging.
Would you put those packages officially in your distribution?
Pardon?
Would you take those packages by people you don't know and put them officially in your distribution?
Of course not.
No.
Is it okay for you if you create a service where users can put these packages into one centralized searchable repository?
That's OBS.
Like Error in Arch?
I mean, we have some public and searchable repositories, but we always have a review process. So we always have a maintainer group, and these people are responsible to review the...
Yes, of course, not include this, they in the official repository. So
I think we just... Okay, sorry.
About the packaging being the hard work, do you think that part of this is that most packaging formats are hard for users to write, like spec files, e-builds. I don't say that one of them is harder than another one, it's a matter of preference, but don't you think that it depends on the clarity and I don't know, simplicity of format to improve the number of users who would like to write it?
Yeah, if you ask me personally, I would say yes. It's a tough and hard job to package. No matter if it's spec or Debian. I would appreciate a more simple thing that covers all, for example. But I know that's completely off in the future because it's hard to do.
I'm rather fascinated by all these statements because we actually have exactly the reverse problem. So over 90% of people in Arch they do packaging. So people package and nobody wants to do the other stuff. So there's people making packages and so on, and then there's nobody taking care of that that mirrors are in shape, and then this task is given to someone and he gets lost in some work and disappears or anything, and nobody wants to do development except the package manager. There's an active development, but all other things that need development, well, they just get stuck and get lost and so on. And packaging is actually the part that has enough people on it, but the rest is just it's just not improving as fast as it should, considering the increasing number of users, increasing number of packages, and so on. So it's just a reverse problem of what most of you said.
Actually, I don't think I said that. Anyway, what we have in Debian, the main problem is not people wanting to develop, because that does happen. Although there are some cases where we need some more people. But I think the main issue we have in Debian is that because the average for a developer to maintain is about 4 or 5 packages, people start complaining if you do more than 15 or something. Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
I think I've got my name on a couple hundred.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you do more than 15 or 30 packages, people start really complaining in Debian. So, but the main problem we have with that is that people fail to see the big picture, and I think that's one of our main issues for packaging. Because I mean, it's very easy to get focused on those 4 or 5 or 6 packages that you're doing, and not really care about what other packages, how they interact with yours and stuff like that.
So in Debian, packagers in average have a small number of packages?
Small number of packages, yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of team maintainers.
I was just about to say that.
Is this encouraged, or is just
a
fact?
That's a difficult question. It used to be the case that that every package only had one maintainer.
Yes.
And every maintainer only had up to 10 packages. And that it's still the case that there is one main maintainer who's listed in maintaining it. But more often than not these days, for large things like KDE or GNOME, the maintainer is a mailing list, is a group of people. And then there's people who are listed as uploader or co-maintainers, basically. So we have team maintained packages, and if you look at team maintained packages, then you do see that people are often a member of a team where the team maintains like 50, 100 packages. What I meant with the 30 packages is if you're listed as the sole maintainer of a package and you have more than 30, then people start. But in teams, the issue is not as big because I mean, then there's more people in the team who can actually look after the packaging, care for it.
Drifting a little bit into the packaging.
Yeah, sorry.
It's
an infrastructure thing. Sorry, yeah.
Sure, it belongs to
yeah,
some parts of the infrastructure, but
it's kind of at the heart of it.
I'm sorry that the HR talk is directly besides this talk here. They should have been behind each other. We were getting into that also. Right. Doing HR for distributions for.
It should have been done in another
HR as in human resources?
Yes. Well, we were talking about that all the time at the moment. Because how do people get into distribution? How do people get into teams and distributions? That does have to do with infrastructure too, sure. But what I would like to know is, is there any distribution here who pays for their own infrastructure?
Define pace.
If I need 10 servers, I go somewhere, buy 10 servers, and
No,
somewhere.
basically when
15% of our Gentoo machines are owned by the Gentoo Foundation. We do not have a pay for any hosting.
in Debian, the case is mostly that for things like our main service, if we need them, we just ask Peter Garby, who is Linux CTO at HP, and he just hands us a bunch of servers, so that's not the issue. In the case of things like architecture-specific hardware, such as build systems, that's harder because HP doesn't have all of them. They have IS64, they have 64-bit and 32-bit x86, but that's about it. iTanium is IS64. HPBA, but they don't do that anymore. So there the problem is harder, and in that case, what happens usually is that people privately buy it and then get refunded by the Debian bunch of money. So yeah, or when it needs to be repaired, which happens with the older architecture quite often, then those get repaired and get funded by Debian. But we don't actually buy hardware as an organization.
And I guess we are the only one who buys stuff. But it's a little specific because Mandriva is both.
Is a company.
Is a company, and Mandriva Linux is community project.
Right,
so
right.
This company provides servers.
I would guess that for Fedora the same would be true actually.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Does Red Hat buy machines for Fedora?
Sorry, what's that?
I think the primary infrastructure in Fedora is actually hosted by and at Red Hat.
Oh, really?
So even the primary infrastructure team at Fedora is only Red Hat employees.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Fedora is a Fedora project of Red Hat.
Yeah, but Fedora also has a lot of donated machines. And I know there are at least a dozen hosting companies, and Dell, for example, and HP even, who have donated equipment, which is hosted in infrastructure which is donated.
Most of the infrastructure stuff has been brought to the cloud and Amazon hosts. And they have been there. And it's more sponsorship between Amazon, Red Hat, and other donators. It's a mix of all.
Do you feel you have an over-concentration of machines at any one single sponsor that it could actually threaten things if that sponsor on its own went away?
Good question.
I don't think we have that. We have 2 or 3 core machines and with one sponsor. That could be a problem.
You're a commercial organization. CentOS is, though.
Right? We are not commercial, no.
No.
You're not.
The C is not commercial. The C is community.
But your target is certainly businesses, as opposed to, say, ordinary users.
We want the people who say, well, I need the stability of a enterprise distribution, but don't have the means to pay for that. But I don't get the support, and I know I don't get support for that. So no, not really. If there are businesses who want to use that, yes, sure. Many hosters use it. Not here, not in Europe probably, but in America, lots of hosters are using CentOS. Here you get more Debian or SUSE, I guess. In Europe. Well, at least in Germany.
I think just to counter the, but just in sort of like a reply to your question about a single point of failure. I think the problem that we have within CentOS is something which is completely on the extreme other end, in that we would really like to have more than one machine hosted at the same place. And I think we've only got 2 sites where we've got more than one machine. So now if you take the number of machines we've got, and think about the fact that we don't have more than 2 machines in any one place, you'll see how many different locations we spread over.
That's
and
painful.
every person has their own process for support.
Right.
Everybody has their own little ticketing system that you have to go through.
We don't have that in Debian actually. We've got a number of machines hosted at an HP data center, and then some at Brain Food, I guess too. I'm not sure. That's in Texas. So we've got like some 10 locations, and then of course the odd small ones.
Houston and Fort Collins for HP.
Sorry?
Houston and Fort Collins.
Places for
right, yeah.
Houston and Fort Collins.
Right. Yeah, but I was talking about Brain Food, which is Texas. It's a small company. They also have some. They used to host master.debian.org and some other things.
For Gentoo, I'd say 50% of our machines are between four big sponsors that just happen to have the machines there.
Right.
These are all problems we can't do failover because machines aren't sitting beside each other.
Well,
So it could be anything. If those machines don't see each other, that could be anything.
Well,
it doesn't mean that the data center's on fire or that.
We can't do failover for other reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
that's actually
Besides
a larger problem than there's different locations. Like,
I mean,
the Gen 2 forums is the most popular thing. We keep having to increase the amount of hardware for that. If you're doing database replication and stuff, latency is a massive problem. You have to put all in one location.
Right, exactly.
So at the moment, that's 4 machines at Hives NL, the Dutch social network. They said, yeah, you guys can have 4 old machines. No, sorry. Forums was at Hives, and now Bugzilla is on those old machines, and Forums has moved to Gossamer Threads in Vancouver. Because Forums didn't fit on the old machines anymore.
Right. So you had to ship a whole bunch of data.
Yes, that's why I said small things, meaningless, because I didn't count in the forums. We have forums, and we have more forum subscribers than mailing list subscribers, but I think we have more active mailing list users than
we have
active
some
forum users. But
we don't do forums.
We do forums.debbie.net, but not debbie.org. So it's not official. That's the distinction with debbie.net and debbie.org. Debbie.net, every Debbie developer can set up the debbie.net hostname, and debbie.org is just. That's maybe something interesting. So if you have debbie.org, that can only be modified by the Debian administration team.
I think last time I looked at the Gen 2 forums versus the mailing list, they were getting 5,000 forum posts a day, and the lists are only getting 3,000 or 4,000.
I think we're kind of the opposite. The lists get a lot of posts, and the forums are kind of dead.
Well, that's not true. That's not necessarily true. The problem was Jeroen and Tess had set that up, and then they really weren't into the forum thing, but they set it up because some people were, and then at some point they got compromised, and that wasn't very good. And then they disabled it, and then there came complaints, and then somebody else volunteered to maintain it, who was more into it.
I think we have more forum traffic than we have.
But I don't know how much forum. But the Debian mailing list is positively huge.
Your mailing lists are way busier than the Gen 2.
Yeah, you have 12,000 Debian developers in there.
Yeah,
plus the people who are interested.
Right. We've got massive amounts of posts a day, and that's not even counting spam, of which 90% gets thrown away.
I think we have 100, 200 mailing list posts a day on max days, so that's not that much.
I get that much in my mailing.
Yes.
I don't want to think about it.
So here's another interesting statistic, again about location. As of last Sunday, we were in 21 different countries. But on Monday, we lost a machine in Russia, which we don't know if we're going to get back again, so we're down to 20. But we are talking to people, 2 different data centers in China. So if that goes through the next week, we may be back up to 21 countries again.
Yeah, or another thing that's, we have a machine in
China,
Egypt.
is that Indonesia? With the Great Firewall?
Actually, it is an issue because both of these data centers have multi-gigabit connectivity within China.
Right.
But one of them, and this is just the truth, this guy actually only has 128 kilobyte link to the rest of the world.
How?
Because that is the maximum packet filtering cable that the government of China is willing to give him. He's got the capacity, but he can't push more than 128K at a time.
Because government
They throttle the traffic to that rate?
So the problem is he started syncing his main mirror in October last year. He hasn't finished yet.
How? We had the same thing in Africa. Yeah. He supposedly has only 10 Mbit link to Africa or to Egypt, right. That was, but we couldn't see the machine. It's just the initial rsync wasn't done after 4 days, after 5 days, just didn't finish. So if there's an open office update, he will be syncing for 3 or 5 days. He might have better connectivity into Egypt or into neighboring countries.
But it was out that it was blocked.
You don't get the stuff there. So, okay, now a question I would be interested in: who actually has infrastructure in South America? Besides Brazil, sorry. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Do we have Brazil? I think we have 2 Brazil machines, or 1 at least.
Let me check.
Africa?
We had one in Chile.
Africa?
We had one in Chile. We have had one in South Africa.
Anyone else having machines in Africa?
We're looking it up.
Okay.
It's a moment.
So I know we don't.
/machines.cdi.
And it's a slow machine.
Asia is another point. Well, yes, Taiwan probably, Singapore probably,
well,
South Korea, but I think there's...
I want stuff in Asia. I don't have anything in Asia.
It's hard to say because it only says the name of the sponsor rather than the location, so we'd have to check all the. It's going to take a while. Sorry.
4 minutes.
Okay.
You have to decide who wins.
Nobody.
We actually have a break afterwards, so we can run a little over if we want to.
Yeah.
But thanks. Yeah, we're supposed to finish it in 3 minutes.
A show of hands, who wins?
Yeah.
What was that?
Who wins?
I win.
What do you win? You get to
I don't know.
maintain
More
a
users?
server?
No one, South America.
Oh, that would be a great one.
The next talk starts in half an hour. So.
Mirror in Colombia.
Yeah, we know. Mirror in Colombia.
One-
Well, yeah, I think everybody has mirrors all over the world. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
So with the Chinese thing, just to finish that discussion, what we're working on is that Hong Kong has a lot of capacity. So what we're working on is a couple of USB hard drives. So we actually get it into Hong Kong and we ship using postal methods. So it might be funny, it actually sounds really funny, but what happens is, because we don't have any seeds in China, and these are machines that we run ourselves, there are I think 3 or 4 external mirrors who mirror us in China. We estimate that we've got 6 digits of users in China. When these guys want to hit traffic, when these guys want to hit update mirrors, in other parts of the world, they generate a phenomenal amount of traffic out of China. And a lot of mirrors don't like it, whether it's because of politics, whether it's because of policy. We've had mirrors going away saying, you know, I set up a mirror for CentOS in Germany. I don't want, how much was it? You got 4 terabytes of transfer to China in 1 week?
That didn't quite come because he didn't have modlock IO on there, but they're getting hit from some download software. There's some download manager which hits the mirrors in parallel, and if you kill the IP address, it just comes back with the next IP address. Just because those people can't get the software on different ways, so they try to spread as many mirrors as possible from as many IP addresses as possible. That seems to be some Chinese-based download management software. I've never heard of that before.
DDoS attack.
Do you guys have well-defined policies as to how often users should hit mirrors before they get banned?
As we don't
control
most mirrors, no.
But you guys do rsync mirrors. We don't.
Okay. With Gentoo, with the rsync mirror side, there's actually 2 separate tiers. The core set rsync.gentoo.org is strictly in-house. We guarantee the content on those mirrors. We validate that and they typically run a few minutes ahead of the community mirrors, because not all community mirrors are well maintained and very fast.
Right.
All the actual core ones actually serve directly from RAM. Doesn't touch disk.
Wow.
How large is your data?
That rsync set, it's 280 bytes of data, but you have to watch out for inodes. If you don't watch out, 280 megabytes of data.
Okay.
I missed a unit.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't watch out for inodes, it loads up to about 700 megs.
Right. Well, we at the moment have our internal sync machines open. If you know which machine it is, you can sync from there, but we reserve the right to publicize your machine then. Because the rsync banner says, well, only sync from here if you are an official mirror. It's not
in Debian there. I think it's all based on IP access lists. So if you want to be a primary mirror, you talk to the mirror admins, and then they give you an account, and then
we have that for DVD at the moment. So if you want to serve the DVD, find another mirror who already has the DVD or ours.
Right, and then they work with SSH triggers. So once you're finished, you SSH into there, and it starts the process, and you can disconnect again. So it's waterfall. It's a really waterfall model.
Yeah, we do have restricted mirrors for the community mirrors to access.
Right.
Like the rest of the Gentoo mirrors are rsync.country code. Those are all the community-run ones that they have a mirror, it's a specific mirror that only they can access and sync against.
So does that mean that all of your rsync mirrors have to have a dedicated IP?
No.
Because if it's rsync.country code, you can't actually vhost rsync. Unless you just look for a path.
Yeah. We do have a bunch of them that they regularly send us the IP data like every 60 minutes. If you haven't sent it, we expire it out the list. So kind of dynamic DNS marked up.
Next slide.
Okay. I had some more slides, but we talked about that between slides. That's the last one.
In that Linux, there is a wrapper called Power Bill that checks the mirrors you have on the mirror list, and then download a piece of program from one mirror, another piece from another mirror, another piece from another mirror. So you don't download all the software and use all the bandwidth on a specific mirror. And it's based on ARIA too, protocol, and it's really fast and
well, it's
sort of like Gigadoe, right? Like Gigadoe.
You should have been looking at the Mirror Brain talk just before this one.
Yeah, exactly. You should have been looking at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the talk right before this one was talking about a program, Mirror Brain, which actually does what you were just describing. So.
I think we're talking for the same thing because ARIA 2 is a Metalink
implementation.
Okay.
Yeah, that was covered in the previous talk.
So yeah, whatever. Yeah, there was a reason why I tried to lock them together.
Yeah, that was a reason why I didn't want to do Mirror in Lash Talk here, because that's a whole kind of different problems, I guess.
Right, yeah, sure. I was going to say something.
You were talking about bringing people in to the infrastructure teams. Does anybody do interviews or tasks, or do some sort of a selection based on something like that?
Yeah, definitely when new people join the infrastructure team, there's a couple of things off the top of the easy items to do on the to-do list that here are something that needs doing.
Yeah, I think if you start selecting people, I think you'll find that usually you've got too few volunteers as it is, and if you start selecting them, you end up with even less, and then you've got major problems. It's usually best to give them some low-hanging fruit and see how they do, and then if they do well, then give them some more responsibilities. I think that's the best way to do it, because otherwise you just start rejecting people. And if they do the low-hanging fruit and either mess up, or it takes way too long, or something else goes wrong, then you know you don't want to give them anything else, and you move on, and they move on, and they've had a chance, and you've seen it didn't work out. So I no harm done at that point. I think that's the best way to do it, basically.
So what as an example, what would some of these tasks be?
One that comes up pretty frequently for Gentoo is actually the initial setup of a machine just prior to firing the automation. In our case with Gentoo, it's that you log into the machine. You're going to end up... we partition the machines manually. That's not part of the automation, just because the machines tend to vary a fair bit. So you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to partition the machine and set up the LVM. And then you have to read enough of our internal CF Engine documentation and setup to add the new machine to CF Engine, so that when you fire the automation, that the automation is going to work. And they get to read the logs and say, CF Engine failed to add this machine. Why? Because you forgot something in the configuration.
I'm not the last person to do CF Engine. Yes.
and carry on using it, because I'm not going to move to Puppet. Yeah.
I don't know how good CF Engine is with role isolation, but Puppet and Chef and VCFG are really bad at it. So if you have to give somebody access to CF Engine and the manifest behind it, that person could pretty much do anything on any machine anywhere.
Yes, I know they can change a whole batch of stuff on almost any machine.
And then you boot them out, and you don't talk to them anymore.
In the entire time with the Gentoo infrastructure team, we've had a single person that went abusive, and he was dealt with within 6 hours.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about.
That's a question I have. How do you throw people out? Not that we have a luxury at the moment to be able to throw people out, but
we've had that problem within Debian, and we've actually booted a few people out. Mostly for not being abusive in infrastructure kind of things, but more socially abusive.
And that happened in Mexico City some years ago, didn't it?
Yeah, that was one case. That was a very well publicized case, and that was actually a bit like on the spot and figure out how to get home.
So I guess key distribution and passive distribution is done automatically, so you can revoke access very fast.
Yes.
What's behind my question?
That's what I said. What we have.
Easy,
oh right, sorry.
Not.
Well, what we have
Yeah,
we've got another directory, so you just remove them from the other directory, your account is gone within a few hours, because with a few minutes actually, because it contains a local cache of the other directory. So 15 minutes later, your account is gone. And for uploads, there's a central GPG key server which contains your key. If it goes out of there, it syncs into it uploads maintenance software, and so a few minutes or not long.
Like kicking out a regular developer is effective within a couple of minutes.
Right.
As the specific case was, we're having to boot somebody out of the infrastructure team.
Right.
And just the basic automation side of it is within half an hour, but all this stuff you have to go check by hand since the person has had root access to the machines.
Right.
Is 6 hours or so of work.
Right. Yeah, sure. That takes a bit more.
What do you do with people that are in the team, whether it's an infrastructure team, it doesn't matter, that have responsibilities, they worked well, but certainly during their life, they don't have the priority anymore to work on that, you don't hear anything from them. How do you process getting those people out of the project and get new people in? Because often they don't take responsibility by saying that they don't have the time anymore. They just disappear.
I'll give a quick answer to this one, but one of the other Gentoo guys that's probably in the room over was actually just going to be discussing it more fully. We have a mail that goes out twice a week to a team, an internal team that we have called the retirement team, and you after 60 days with no commits, we'll send you an email and ask you what's up. And if you don't respond to us within another 60 days, you're gone.
You wait 60 days.
60 days for notification, and you get 60 days to respond.
So 120 days.
120 days, 4 months.
Even if all your software is bug-free?
Pardon?
If your software is bug-free?
Well, then you respond. You're supposed to.
It's proof you're going to respond if there is a bug.
Within Debian, it's slightly less automated. We've got a team which we don't call retirement. We call the MIA team, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, what we do there is if somebody's bug page is like many bugs there and nothing's happening or stuff like that, then you get a mail from the MIA team. What's up? And a few more mails if nothing happens. It does go a lot faster than 60 days from that first moment, but there's a few reminders because maybe the mail didn't arrive or spam folders go in between, stuff like that.
We actually send a few more mails.
Yeah, sure, okay. Anyway,
it's 60 days and 60
right,
days.
Right, anyway. So indeed, eventually, if we don't get any response or the mail bounces, which happens, people forgot to update their email addresses.
Well, we actually give people local email accounts, so
right, yeah,
we do check if you.
Yes,
we do log in and see if you checked it.
We know org mail is forwarded usually.
Yeah.
So if you don't update that and the mail bounces, then you're gone. Basically, but in any case, if people are not active and don't respond to the MIA team, then eventually they get thrown out.
Yeah, like particularly if they've been around for a long time, and their mail starts bouncing, we will make an attempt to contact you via other means.
Yeah, so will the MIA team. They will try, but if you don't find them, then it's gone.
But this is in case that the people are off of the internet or something like that. But what in the case that they're still around, they're still interested in helping, although they don't have the time. Answering an email is easy. Staying in the team is easy. You know, because it gives you respect to stay in the team, but they're not really.
What you mean is they're still active, semi-active on the team, but not as much as they should be.
They're active within the community, but not necessarily the team.
Right, something like that.
The team grows, but you can't go.
Yeah, and we separately encourage that. We encourage the teams to trim out their dead weight per se.
I think
most of them do.
I don't think we have a process for that in Debian actually.
We don't.
And maybe we should. Because
the Perl team has probably 150 members,
something like that, yeah.
But at most 30.
In the infrastructure team, you don't want to have it too big because
yeah.
And you don't
Right.
want to have it too small.
Yeah.
You want to have active members.
Yeah.
Well,
I think this sort of thing is probably easy to quantify if this code or if this packaging, because you can see it's done a package.
Yeah, I mean, like within the infrastructure, so I can see that you're making commits to the infrastructure repository that controls things.
So should we sum up? Maybe take one more question and finish up so people can get something to eat or something?
A question. From your experience, what will be the most important lessons for a new distribution startup?
That's a good question. Are we going to take 5 minutes for it?
I'd say think first and start. Because many distributions probably started by just one guy or two guys just started something, and then it grew and it grew and it grew, and in the end you end up with a pile of packages and a pile of infrastructure and some people, and nothing is organized, and you sit there and think...
Document your processes.
Nothing is documented, nothing is organized, and then you think, now it doesn't work anymore, it's just stuck, it's just in some kind of a deadlock phase. So you just have to think, how do we do it, then do it, and not just say, let's start by choosing a package format, let's start by choosing some basic packages that start, and then...
Basically what you're saying is you need a plan.
You need a plan, yes, you need a concrete plan. How do I organize my distribution? Because certainly we had that problem. There was a one guy show, he added more people and more people and more people, and suddenly the founder of the project and the main lead and the only one who had root access on every server suddenly went MIA. And the distribution was basically dead for... so there was a package in work, there were no new releases, there was nothing really new for over a year until he came there and said, well, I don't have time for anything, just someone else do it. And then we started, well, we need some processes, we need some things. And well, that was, I think that was in 2005 after 4 years, or maybe 2006 after 5 years. And maybe that's a bit late.
Another thing, think of automation early. Because it's easy to do sys administration when you have 10 machines. As soon as you're 20 machines, you're completely lost.
And it's easy to set up automation when you have 10 machines, and it's much harder when you have...
to get that automation when the machines are already running, because they might look completely different from that what you're running at the moment.
They will look different from the one you
I want to be positive about that.
Well, no, the thing is, if you don't do automation in the beginning, then your machines will diverge. You will accumulate differences. And when you implement automation, when you will eventually implement automation, you need to work away those differences, and that makes it harder.
Even with automation, I guarantee you, there are things you're going to miss that are going to carry on diverging.
True, absolutely.
Sure, but it's easier to repair because I repaired at a central point.
Yes.
I have to repair it on the machines.
But you have to notice it.
So, and yes, documentation. In case nobody mentioned that, documentation is...
Well, on that note,
we don't
did we say documentation?
I have to admit, we don't really do that.
Documenting processes.
Yes, indeed.
On that note, maybe we'll conclude the roundtable. Thanks very much. Thanks, guys.
So we have a 15-minute break now?